For as much as Kevin Sylvester is surrounded in the game of golf, I liken him to a hybrid club because he can basically do everything when it comes to broadcasting. Not just that, but he's a broadcaster, speaker, consultant, works with the PGA Tour with their radio division, and also PGA Tour Live, does a host of other shows as well. And we're going to tell his story here on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, also doing golf. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. Kevin, I appreciate you doing this. I'm such a big fan of yours and your calls, and I know you've been traveling a lot. Here's a question to start. How have you found the tactic that you've used to best gain the respect of the PGA Tour fan?
Well, well, first of all, thanks for having me, and very, very flattering intro. Appreciate that. On being able to do everything, remind me to tell you later about my foray into anchoring news here. But anyhow, to your question with that, I mean, I've been doing it for 8 years, and I want to say it probably took me about 5 years to get comfortable with what I was doing and how I was doing it. And and it's not that I wasn't getting positive feedback or the affirmation like, hey, you're doing a good job. It was more so of having caddies nod at me like, hey, good to see you. Having players starting to know who I am, because we're not out there every single week. And, there were some gaps in the events, although it's progressed to where it's been more steady for me now in the last couple of years, which is great. So I think my own comfort and confidence with it has translated to gaining that respect from the fans. And the validation of it is when you're on a golf course calling shots and people are like, hey, which one are you? And you say it, Kevin Sylvester, yeah, all the time. So, that's very cool and flattering. And I love when fans, say, hey, I love listening to the product. Like, you guys make it so exciting. Matter of fact, this last term at the Canadian Open that I just worked, this little golfing group we got, which they text way too much in group text. So if my golf buddies at my club are listening, you guys text way too much. Get a job. But anyhow, one of them was driving back and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm listening to Kevin. This is amazing. Like, this is so exciting. Thanks, Kev." And so, that stuff's pretty cool to hear.
How much are you powered by validation? Obviously, that's a really important part of what we do because we get that sense that we're doing a good job. But when you look at your career and how far you've come and what you've done, how much do you rest that on getting some approval from others?
Well, I'll give you two answers to that. Number one, everybody likes to hear they're doing a good job. No matter whether you're a assembly worker, right? And you put together the greatest widget. Hey, great job. Your widgets never have any faults in it, right? People love to hear that. A chef, hey, the meal was outstanding. And I bet you probably feel the same way, Bryan. When you've had a good broadcast, right? Because you've done it so many times. Like, it's just like a theater performer, a singer. Like, they know if they put on a good show. They don't like they know if they're bringing it that night. And then the audience delivers a little more energy back to you, right? So, if if I'm doing a corporate speech and I can feel if I've got the audience and the energy back from them, and I have a little more jump to me with that. Yeah, the validation feedback's good, but I feel like 25 years in my broadcasting career, something like that. I stopped counting as I got older. Like I done it enough to know, like, hey, I'm delivering today, or I don't have my best stuff today, so let's keep it simpler.
Well, what to you is a good broadcast?
Well, I'll stick with golf here, specifically when, just so I'm doing where I am conveying the shot as it's happening, right? Like I'll know, man, I described that well or not. Like, if I've got the read right and I'm hitting the notes exactly when they need to be hit, like with a putt's made, or it's going to miss, and leave that spot out for the crowd to react. I'll give you an example. It just happened at the Canadian Open. Scotty Scheffler, round one, and it was kind of it wasn't there wasn't a lot of energy in the group. Well, a lot of great highlights, right? We're looking for highlights too. And on the 16th hole, he's in this thick rough behind the green, and they come to me and I say, Scotty Scheffler, thick rough here. I think all he's got to do is get this on the green, guys. And I'm sorry, I'm getting in my call voice here.
No, I like this. I like this. This is great.
He's got to get this rolling down here. And, Scheffler with the play. And I'm standing probably 15 yards from Scotty back of the green. So I know he can kind of hear me. These guys have become accustomed to it. So, so Scotty hits the shot. I'm like, here comes the shot that lands softly on the green. This is releasing. And it's about 30 feet from the hole. I go, guys, this could go in. This ball is rolling towards the cup. This is getting closer in it. And I go, I called that he made it as it's on the lip because I knew it was going in. Like he made it. And as soon as you said it, the crowd went, roar. Like sometimes you don't see it going until it goes in and you're saying he made it with the crowd, but I had it right before. And so the audio of it was amazing. And Scotty looks over at me, raises both hands. He's like, it was a really, really cool moment. And so that to me made the broadcast that day, that one highlight where the rest of it was okay. Like, I thought I was having a good broadcast, but there weren't those moments like that, the big bang moments that we see often on the PGA Tour.
What's the best compliment that you've ever gotten from a player? Got to be out there.
God, I've gotten one from a caddy. Just
okay.
Said, man, listen, like when I'm not working in the week, I listen to you guys. I love you guys. Like, that's essentially it. The players, some hear us, but so much so not. I'll tell you, perhaps, something that was complimentary. So during the pandemic, the PGA Tour didn't have pro-ams. They had what they called greenside chats. And it was like this via Zoom. So I would be in my home studio and they'd bring players in and, we'd have a half-hour chat. I'd, moderate the interview or just conduct the interview, take questions, what have you. Well, Rory McIlroy could not do the tour championship one because he was having his first child, and didn't want to miss it. And I got a call maybe 2 months later from the producer of these things, said, hey, Rory's making himself available for his tour obligation, tour championship. Can you do this Thursday? I'm like, sure. I go, what's the deal? It's like you and Rory, there'll be 2 groups of sponsors, 3 people from Coca-Cola, 3 people from Southern Company or whatever. Like, they were the foursome. I'm like, okay. Now the players typically would get on like a minute before. So I click on the Zoom, test everything, the link, like 20 to 4. We're doing like 4 p.m. I'll say 20 to 4. Boom, Rory comes up immediately. Hey, Kev. I said, Rory, you're way early to be on. I was like, that's okay. Well, let's chat. So we had like a 15-minute conversation just about life. How his daughter's doing, so something, connection we had in common. And it was just a person-to-person conversation. So that was pretty cool.
There's a realness in him. There's a realness in you. Kevin Sylvester is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. You talked about the interviewing right there. A post-round interview. Oftentimes, Earl Forsey will throw it to you to talk with a player afterwards. And how do you adjust your questions to the player's personality?
Well, I typically go in. Now, sometimes we might only get, hey, you got 2 questions. I always try to push it. Let's get 3, maybe 4. It depends. It depends on the answer, right? Like, so I always go in. I try to ask him something specific about their round. That way I let them know, like, hey, I was out there with you.
Yes.
Watching the whole thing, right? So, because sometimes, they get questioned by, reporters who, just by nature of where they need to be, they're not out on the golf course. They don't see some things. So I try to ask them something specific about their round or shot. And, garner from that answer, I try to, like I'll have a backup question, but I try to ask them a question off of their answer. So I try, and this is something I've learned over the years, whether it be NFL, NHL, NBA, whatever sport that I've worked in or covered, you often ask the best questions after you've listened to the answer. right? So because you'll find something there like, hey, I want to ask you actually about that, and you garner those answers. So, and then I find you get the longer answers from that. So that's how.
Yeah, I love how your approach is to let them know in one way or another that you were there, that you watched their round, and that little validation to them probably gives them more of a willingness to give you a good answer. And then, like you said, you play off of that. Kevin Sylvester is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. So here's an interesting question. You mentioned you do speaking events and such. You've also hosted auctions. I saw this. So what's different about hosting a golf show, hosting a broadcast, to the Kevin Sylvester who is hosting an auction?
So it's interesting. And, with the pandemic, gosh, I probably haven't done, well, actually, it's not true. I just did an event about a month ago. But I didn't, they had an auctioneer coming for the auction part. I'm like, okay, you sure? Okay, no problem. Like, I don't do that. Come on, I don't do all that, I don't do that.
I was hoping you did.
No. It just happened by chance one time at a charity event. They're like, hey, the auctioneer couldn't come. Can you do the auction? I'm like, all right, sure, no problem. So, and what what I do is I just kind of throw all care out the window, if you will, in the auction, and I just start picking on the people who are bidding, and just goad them into stuff and get things going back and forth. And I go out into the audience. I don't just stand up there. I'll go out, make sure you got me a wireless mic, and I'll go out in the audience and I'm going to sweat afterwards because I just, it's full contact auction almost. But it came to a thing where people are like, oh, hey, can you do mine? Can you do mine? Can you do mine? And it's a skill, just like, speaking is a skill. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to start charging a fee for doing this. And I remember one person balked at the fee. I said, well, what's your goal on the auction? And they're like, oh, we hope to get 10,000. I said, all right, I'll tell you what, you can either pay me X or you can pay me 20% above 10 grand what I get you. And they're like, I'll do the 20%. Well, I got them 25,000. Wow. So I said, you know what, just pay me the fee. The rest goes to the cause here. But, and from there, it's been good. I mean, I don't like, I due to my schedule now and such, I mean, it's not something I like to do a lot. I like to leave them wanting more.
Yes. But on top of that, you're also a speaker, a motivational speaker. And I wanted to go in that direction now. Kevin Sylvester is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. You motivate others, but what is the speech, Kevin, if you look at the start of your career that you've used to motivate yourself, that's helped you kind of go from one job to another, climb the ranks, build up this rapport and this reputation in the industry, and have been in sportscasting, like you said, for 25 plus years?
So this is, it's funny how things happened to you early on. I was the overweight kid growing up, picked on, overlooked at times. So I decided I'm going to outwork everybody. Right. So, that's how I went from getting cut from in 7th grade from basketball to starting the next year. Cause I just, I remember my dad, I was cut. I'm like, I'm done. And he's like, listen, you can either quit or you can work harder to come back better next year. Okay. So that's what I decided to do. And those things seemingly happen. But this is a story I tell anytime that I'm giving a motivational speech on in perseverance, particularly in this business. You absolutely need it, right? But I remember I had to get an internship, and I went to a small state university in New York College, Fredonia. Like no one ever heard of Fredonia, maybe the Marx Brothers old movie, Fredonia, but it's actually the town I was born in, didn't grow up there, and ended up going to school there. And I remember I was like, I got to find an internship. Like, I don't know anybody. My father was an accountant. He didn't know anybody. Like, well, how am I going to do this? Well, we had a guest speaker come to our audio production class, the late Ray Marks, great newsman. He was at WGR 550 news radio at the time. And I went up to him after class and I said, hey, I would like to come and can I come and observe Pete Weber, who's the voice of the Nashville Predators right now? He was the voice of the Buffalo Bisons at the time, the AAA baseball team. I said, I'd love to just come to, can I go see a game at a booth? He's like, sure, call the station, ask for Pete. So I called and Pete Weber answered. He's like, yeah, come on. Can you come up with this Sunday, whatever? I'm like, yes, I'm there. So I go to the game. I sit there just kind of checking out everything going on. And I asked Pete after the broadcast, I said, Pete, can I'd love to be an intern. Like, he's like, I don't handle that. There's a fella at the radio station. He's a promotions director. He handles all the internships. Call him on Monday. Love to have you. Okay. So I call on Monday. I get his voicemail. I call on Tuesday, get the voicemail again. I call Wednesday, voicemail, Thursday, voicemail, Friday, 5 days in a row. I've left 5 voicemails. We go to the following week. And my roommate's like, you're calling that guy again? He hasn't called you back. He's not going to call you back. I said, you know what? I'm going to get an answer. Whether it's yes or no, I'm getting an answer. Bryan, how many days do you think I called? Business days.
I'm going to go with 15.
I called 31 days, 31 business days in a row, left 31 voicemails. On day 32, I call again. I know I see your reaction. You're like, you didn't do this. I totally did. Day 32, answers the phone. He's like, hello, this is Bryan. I'm like, I'm speechless, right? I had my voice. I'm like, hi, this is Kevin Sylvester. He's like, oh, Kevin, you know what? I got all your voicemails, but I had somebody, but today's your lucky day. The kid who's going to do it just called me and said he can't because of work purposes. So you're the guy.
Wow.
So everybody says, wow, how lucky are you? And I say, well, am I lucky or did I create my own luck there? Well, I was determined and persistent to get an answer. And so I started the following week. That's how quick this happened. And my internship was whatever Pete and the late Darian Chapman, who became a good friend, he passed away several years ago. Whatever they need, you help them out. I go, well, what about when the Bisons are out of town? Like, you don't have to come in. So I remember the first Bisons road trip, I showed up at the radio station like Monday at 9:30 in the morning. They're like, Kevin, you don't have anything to do here. I go, I know, but can I just check things out? And that led to them hiring me to board out part-time, and the rest is history. So I would just say if you want it, if you really want it, you've got to find a way to go after it and get it. And every job that I've really wanted, like, Bryan, I'm sure there's jobs you've applied for and like, that'd be great if I were the voice of the, whatever, Raiders, right? They got an opening now. But the ones that I've really wanted that I knew I was meant for, focus my energies to really go after.
To take your approach, which is that persistence, which I find so inspiring, how far back can you trace that sort of behavior? Like when you were a kid, do you remember ways in which you would act that way so that when you got into the professional world, that you knew you were going to go that way and that it would pay off for you?
I think it's probably from sports, and for whatever reason or another, I always felt like I got the shaft too many times. It was just like, well, and a lot of it was politically, the politics of Little League. Like, I remember a 12-year-old all-star team, like, why the hell am I not on the number one all-star team? Like, my pitching record was 6-0. My batting average was this, but, they head coach got an assistant coach and his kid makes it. And, like, okay. And then I remember getting cut junior year of basketball, and I'm like, they kept 3 kids that there's me and like, we're way better than. And so they just kind of taught me like, okay, you're going to have stuff happen to you that, is just going to be, because people make decisions and they're not always the right decisions. So, you've got to kind of carve your own way and go your own way. So, and believe me, I've had a lot. I'm not saying I've had bad things. Like I look at my career and I'm like, I'm amazed at it. It's, I've been very blessed, and, some of those things, like I really went after others. People recognized the quality work and said, hey, we want you to do this for you. So I've looked at every setback is, okay, here's an opportunity to shift and kind of do things. And I feel like I got to this point in my career where there's still some things I want to do. Believe me, like I made a checklist early on. I want to call NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL. I wanted to call the major sports, right? Well, I worked on NFL broadcasts when I was young. I was a halftime host on the Bills radio network, but that doesn't count. All right. It still doesn't count. I'm like, everybody says, well, you worked on the broadcast. I'm like, maybe. There's a little gray area there. I've done college football. I've done college basketball. I've done NBA. I did one NBA game. I worked at WBT radio in Charlotte, and Bob Licht was the play-by-play guy at the time. I did the pregame, halftime, and a call one night, and his wife got into a car accident. He's like, she's fine, but I want to be with him. I'm like, hey, absolutely. He's like, can you call the game? And I'm like, great, yes. It was the Hornets against the Jazz, Stockton Malone.
Wow.
And I got to call one NBA game, and it was a thrill. I mean, I'd love to do that more. And NHL, I worked for the Sabres. I filled in for the great Rick Jeanneret for 5 seasons, calling games. And it's funny. I remember my boss goes, "Why do you want to do this? Like, you don't want to be the guy." I said, "You know what? Might be my only shot ever. So I'm not going to work." Yes, people aren't going to like me, right? That's okay by me, because I'm going to take my shot. And that led me, that got the attention of the PGA Tour. So everything, happens for kind of a reason. So I'm trying to figure out the baseball one though, Brian. I don't know how that one's going to happen, but I have faith it will at some point.
It's going to happen. And as soon as it does, I want to listen. I want to be at the game, and I want to shake your hand to congratulate you.
Hey, it's funny. I was, there's a young sportscaster I was working with, just starting out on something. And he's like, "Hey, any advice?" I said, "Hey, you know what? Don't be afraid to try everything. Like, if someone asks you to do college wrestling, do it." I said, I got asked to do it several years ago. I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I don't know anything about college wrestling," but I did. I started watching. I said, "You've got YouTube. You can watch these past events and get an idea of the of demeanor you're supposed to have." I ended up loving college wrestling. It was great. Like, I did it for like a year and a half, a couple meets. It was for UB, University of Buffalo. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like, what a sport. And it's funny. One of the dads comes up to me the senior night, and he comes up, "Hey, man, I love watching. You really know your stuff." And I'm thinking, geez, I got him fooled there. And then recently, I was at the beginning, remind me to tell you about news. So the morning anchor at our NBC affiliate, where I do a couple of shows, and they said, "Hey, this guy's you do this 2-week is a 11-day hockey game they do for the Guinness Book. He's going to be out. It's our sweeps. We thought you might be pretty good at anchoring news." And I'm like, sure, why not? Let's give it a go. How hard could it be? And then that turned into 3 weeks at that stint, like back in November, December. And then I did another 3 weeks, like earlier, and it was like, "Wow, what'd you think?" I'm like, "It was interesting. It was something different." And I had a buddy say, "Why'd you do that? You're a sports guy." I said, "Well," I said, "because I don't know if I'd ever get an opportunity to do it again. And, so why not? It's not a permanent thing. It's not a life sentence. I'm just filling in here or there." And it was something else that I'll have in my bag of tricks down the road for something else. And, who knows what's going to happen. So it's been very interesting to be able to try different things. And actually, it keeps you a little, it reinvigorates you a little bit, challenges you a little bit. Like, okay, this is something new. I better be on my game.
Well, and Kevin, as we wrap up this conversation, to hear you right there talking about the different things you've done goes back to the intro here, in that you're like playing with a hybrid club, because you get people, you get companies out of a bind, you come in there, you do stand-up work, you're relied upon, you get the job done, and there's really no terrain that you can't hit off of, to take a little bit of a metaphor there. And it's so cool to hear how your childhood athletic experiences, how that fueled you, how things might not have gone your way, but then to hear how you channeled that professionally, and things are going your way, and it couldn't happen to a better person. Kevin Sylvester, I'm Bryan Fenley. I really appreciate you. This was so much fun. Thanks for the time and telling your story.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. Enjoyed being with you. And let's do it again sometime.
Yes.